Thank you very much. And welcome in the big family of the Sans Frontières. You know, without borderism exists. This is a gang. Welcome to the gang. So, first of all, I should like to thank you for this invitation, and especially for the honor you confer on me by entrusting me with this keynote speech. Keynote means key. I have no key. Following my friend, President Martia Tissari, and facing you, Erkki, it is a real honor. So today the meeting is very important. It's fundamental to ensure that there is an interaction between all the fields. We need to work not exclusively on the base of our respective and very respectful national history. We need to access to the various sources and documents, and not only the historian. Civil society, politicians, everybody. We need to share experience. Just think about what we did, Marty, the UN system, and your humble servant in Kosovo, rightly or badly. But there is no more war, and it has taken a long time. I serve, as you said, sir, Mr. Chairman, as Minister for Foreign Affairs. But that is not the place where I have learned diplomacy and history the best way. That's not the place where I have understood the ideas which help me comprehend the world. I've learned history and diplomacy, if I understand the word, in the field, in books also, of course. If you want to understand how we went to the First World War, read, you wrote, The Sleepwalkers, written by Christopher Clark. This is the way no people were talking to anybody. They were not talking to each other. They just went to war. And of course, you have also to read novels on this period, not only historical book. I learned more about diplomacy during more than 40 years as humanitarian worker. Humanitarians, so-called at that time, French doctors, and fortunately they are not only French. And I learned also the reality as Minister of Health. But talking to the historian was not the best place to understand what I have seen. I've learned history by taking risk, by venturing out in countries which were not familiar to me, by confronting ideas that weren't mine, by reaching out to people who weren't necessarily friends, by offering my medical help, medical experience to wounded people I was politically opposed to. I have learned history by wandering all over the world, by reading, by exchanging with others, and above all, through my actions. Treating children is certainly a better lesson than reading a book. When we created Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, and it was in 71, my dear friends, 71, after this awful war of Biafra, Nigeria, and it was in 68, this Biafra war. It was in that time when we create Doctors Without Borders, it was just impossible to take care of a patient on the other line of this very theoretical line of a border. It was against the law, even to treat as a French doctor the Italian patient or the Finnish patient. It was against the law. So we decided to change the law before the lawyers. And this is the lesson. If you want to change history, don't count on historians. Okay, if you do not react, you're a very peaceful people, huh? History and historian were turned to past, and we are, if I understand well, turned to the future. So the theoretical lessons were not enough to understand human beings. Human beings are made of flesh and blood. They are also made of national identities. But above all, they are made of different backgrounds, different cultures, if we use to say shyly in diplomacy, we said culture. That is to say, humans are made of roots and dreams. And this is precisely why historian contribution is essential to understand the world, in the same way as understanding the world is essential to understand history. Today, I would therefore like to tell you about the suffering world I know little, about my understanding of its history, about the conformism of some historians, about my perception of its memory, and about what borders have represented for this history and this memory for the world and for me. And according to my experience, and considering what's going on in Syria, I know something. History has no memory. Let's talk about historian and borders, because historian without borders, I'm aware about borders more than about historian. History is not a privilege, the property of only historian. Borders have played a major role in my life. They have guided part of my commitment as a doctor and as an activist, and also as a minister, at the same time fully aware I was of their importance and of the need to go beyond them. Throughout all these days, years, I was able to grasp the ambiguity of the lines that divide and shape our world. And these lines were consecrated, supported, strengthened by some historians. I will revert later on the damaging effect and how I tried to fight them. But I should like to start by underlining their virtue, which indeed exists. From my experience, the importance of border is a double experience. First of all, it has to do with democracy. For borders are the framework in which sovereignty is exercised. From Biafra, where I told you I started my sad career with the International Red Cross Committee, to Kosovo, where I was with the UN system, and tomorrow with Iraqi people, Kurdish people, the people oppressed by powerful empires or small states need orders to signify their independence, their interdependence, freedom, and their right to be themselves. This democratic function of borders confers on them another symbolic dimension. Borders, even if they are fantasy, contested or negated, mean that you still believe in yourself. Borders give you the right to hope for your own destiny, a better future, a revolution, a project, or simply a country for your children. I felt that illusion from very far, since I told you Biafra, Lebanon, Chad, Libya, 40 years of, let's say, fight against war or fight for peace. Of course, in conflicts, bloodshed, torture, and jails, with leaders betraying the poor volunteers, betraying future and romanticism, and also with very great leaders fighting for peace. At first, borders and therefore ideas are hope and sometimes illusion. To create this border, more history than geography is needed. In general, you need religion, myth, religion again, and a language. We witness in Kosovo, sorry to come back, dear Marty, the weight of history in the borders and in the tension they created. And we were not absolutely pleased to separate, to cut the country. It was just impossible to do something else. Otherwise, let the people kill each other. And what is going on in Syria right now? Since close to 5 years, we are witness. We were not witness in Kosovo. We were part of the peace process. The tragedy in Kosovo is one of the many examples of this Europe where nationalism were forged during the 19th century. They were born out of the so-called founding myth, who glorified a buried past and sometimes even made it up, was not very prudent in the Balkan area. This tragedy in Kosovo often revolved around the memory, a very good example of the Battle of the Field of Blackbirds. It was a negative event or a positive event. A defeat, among others, Serbia against the Kosovo. The defeat was which in the 19th century was, 1,000 years after, was promoted to the rank of national and nationalistic myth and took in the 20th century the scale we witness. Who were right? Who were the winners? What did the historian say about the Battle of the Field of Blackbirds? It was the symbol of a defeat or the symbol of a victory? I think well, at last, we stopped the killing. I want to say something. Somebody is in charge. Okay, because you know, unfortunately, our friend, the Russian member of Memorial, is not able to come to our discussion, and so we have to enlarge the time. Let's talk about borders and misfortune. I was talking about the Battle of the Field of Blackbird, but I just read a new book published in France on one of the famous Napoleon's battle, Eylau. We believed, and I've learned from historian people, French historian and a lot of other historians, that Eylau was a victory of Napoleon. Well, learn all the books, either some in Germany, but mainly in Russia. Eylau was a Russian victory. So, another time, when you reinforce, of course, the tension in saying so. I have to balance my time. Of course, I was very positive about the way we form with nationalism and very great battles, the positive role of borders. But borders also is driving the nation to misfortune. And while borders have first of all allowed freedom or a signal to freedom, they also generate oppression. For me, in the political and moral history which shaped my awareness, workers invoke Goebbels' famous statement in the League of the Nations in 1933. The Nazi leader answering to a protester, said, "A man's home is his castle." En français, on dit charbonnier est maître chez soi, which justified as much as the Third Reich massacre as the inaction of democracy in face of the biggest atrocity in history. A man's home is his castle. Most of my life was devoted to ensuring that such statements would never be tolerated again. You know, we always say at the end of a war, never again. And you are waiting for the next one. We said never again about Syria. We said never again about Iraq. We said never again several times. And it restarts again. Throughout the last century, borders have allowed the emergence of dictatorship, generate wars, and nurtured blindness. I have been a witness to many of these tragedies. I have measures the reality of these borders. I have seen what was done in the name of history, and even more in the name of the identities which they are thus strengthened by borders and historians. I wanted to talk with our Russian friend about Crimea. It was the last, not the last, one of the last movement crossing the border in the negative sense of the word. But I remember something in a way worse. I supported the fight. I was a medical doctor. I was supporting in helping the people. I was not politically supporting the Southern Sudan against the Northern Sudan. During 20 years, they fought. So at the end, Southern Sudan was free and independent. And what happened? After the death of John Garang, who was a big leader, President Salva Kiir and the Vice President Riek Machar start, let's say, killing another time the rest of their people. So by dozens of thousands, the little children of Southern Sudan were dying these last 2 years. What did we do? Nothing, nothing, and nothing. Of course, the good humanitarian people, of course, the ICRC, of course, some humanitarian organizations, they tried to access to the children, but it was so difficult. So this is just a caricature. They fought for borders during 20 years. They had the border, they fought against each other for the power. And they're still fighting, but in a way, because Salva Kiir received Riek Machar less than 2 months ago in Juba, and they restart the same government. Okay. I want to say something about religion and religious people. Because in my sad career, I've always discovered hidden behind the confrontations that religion were playing a role. Religion. Only one battle was not, it was the football, the soccer battle. It was between San Salvador and it was Managua, I don't remember the name. Salvador and Honduras. But it was a real war. They were killing each other after the football game. A part of that ridiculous example, religion is always in favor of peace before the war. Always talking in the dialogue between the religion is sometimes a good one. But after the start of the war, religion, of course, is supporting part in a camp against the other. So the idea of historian without border is a very, very important idea. And you said so, Erkki, very clearly. The role of historian in mediation is too weak. the role of historian to prevent the wars doesn't exist, in fact. Some very good historians, politically minded, yes, they are playing a role, but not enough. Historians are coming after the war. They are, let's say, fixing, they are writing down what is the truth of the moment. But in all my, let's say, involvement in mediation, it was a bit strong. I never seen really historian people or academic people playing a role. Is it to say that it's devoted, this particular important role is devoted to politicians? Certainly not. And your idea of involving the people together, one side and the other, to start understanding what is the culture, the behavior, and the suffering also of both sides, looks like very, very important. But I don't want to stop. Just, I want to underline all the difficulties, but you know the difficulties are key, certainly. You will face all the academic. In creating such a important and a revolutionary, it's a revolution. You will face a lot of enemies and a lot of people, let's say, conformist people. As I told you when we created Médecins Sans Frontières, we were called by all the doctors of my country, doctor without diploma. We were absolutely not received by anybody of the academic in medicine. When we received the Nobel Prize, it was a bit better. But I had to be at the post of Minister of Health to allow the volunteers to leave from their hospital, from their services. Of course, they were non-paid people, but just to leave from the hospital where they were working in, it was not only unpopular, but it was against the law. Because to help somebody on the other side of the border was not allowed. You were outlaw. And of course, you were outlaw crossing the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan to take care of the Afghan people. But even in that splendid illusion I have to talk about at last. Do you know a better experience of no borderism than European Union? European Union was and is the example, the supreme example of having a unity to make peace. And at the beginning, we were setting up European Union to avoid war on our continent, and we did. Not in Balkan, but we treated the problem another way, and we were successful. So, we won. But what do we win? Oh, big success. Erasmus, Schengen. But what did we do facing the migrants in the Mediterranean Sea? My country was absolutely negative. Sorry, Mr. Ambassador, my good friend Mostua, I'm very sorry. But after close to, let's say, 50 years, a bit more, we were unable to welcome the migrants. 28 countries. I know that you have taken a lot. I know that Madame Merkel saved the honor of Europe. But I remember something as Doctor Without Borders, an historian without borders. When it was the end of the Vietnamese War, we, the French people, Doctors of the World, Doctors Without Borders, etc., we sent 7 rescue boats in the China Sea, 7 French rescue boats. And the Norwegians, they send one. And the Germans send one, etc. And we were rescuing the people at 12,000 kilometers from our Mediterranean Sea. And we did. And I personally favorize the welcome of 150,000, sorry, 150,000, 150,000 Vietnamese in my country, France, without any problem. So, it was in, let's say, 80s, 81, 82, 83, etc., during years. And now, we are, geography didn't change. We are at the border, the northern border of the Mediterranean Sea. We have port and navy, vessel. And we didn't do anything like that. And we refused. So, no borderism is less popular than before. Yes, I know. Less popular than before. And you are creating another field of no borderism. Good luck. I really appreciate the way you invited me, but, my dear friends, save Europe, because in the heart of the people, Europe doesn't exist anymore. All things are getting bad. This is a European fault. Things, when it happens, getting well is a national victory. Be careful. Thank you very much.